Let's have a bit of a discussion about loops in Java. Now we're going to start off in this video and look at the while statement. We're going to find out what it is and how it works, and we're going to finish off with some live coding showing how to use the while statement in Eclipse. So firstly, the while statement, it executes code continually while an expression is true. So if the expression is initially false, the code in the brackets never gets executed. Now, as you can see on the screen, there's an example of a while set of statements. So it starts off with the word while, and then in brackets, there's a Boolean expression. Now, what I mean by that is it has to evaluate to true or false. And the code tutorial I'm about to show you will go through this in detail. But essentially, while the condition is true, the code in the brackets will continually be executed up until either the Boolean expression becomes false, you set that in the code perhaps, or the statement break is found in the code and executed. And we're going to show you an example of that as well. While is very useful for doing things like cycling or waiting for a particular event to happen. For example, while there's while you're reading data from a file, you could be continually using the while statement, and it will continually check to see whether there's more data. So very useful to continually be checking something until a particular expression changes. So let's go in and look at some code now and see how to use while in Java code. Okay, so I've opened up Eclipse, and what I'm going to do is delete some of this code which is remaining from our previous tutorial. So I'm going to delete that out. So we start off with a blank slate, and I'm just going to double click demo just so we've got that on the full screen so that you can see. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create an array, and we're going to use the while loop to loop through all the elements of that array, and we're going to sum the total. So to do that, I'm going to start off by creating or typing int, 2 square brackets left and right. I'm going to call it elements equals. We need a curly bracket or a brace. And what we can do is we can just put some numbers in here. And this is a short way to initialize an array. So if you know the values that you want to put into an array at the time of coding, you can put those arrays. You can use the curly brace, as I said, or the curly bracket or the brace, I should say. And you can just type the numbers separated by a comma. So I'm going to enter some numbers. Purely at random. I'm going to close off the brace and put a semicolon to end the line. So next, we need to, before we start our while loop, we need a couple of additional variables. Number one, we need a variable to indicate what position in the elements array we're at, so which one we're processing, if you like. So I'm going to call that one int index pos. I'm going to set it to the value of 0. And because arrays, again, when you're accessing an array element, you're starting at position 0, index pos will start off accessing the very first element, which is the number 5. Next, we need a total to store for our sum. So I'm going to type int sum total equals 0. And that's going to, by the end of the loop, contain the total, the sum of all the elements in the array. So next, I'm going to type while. This is the start of our loop. While index pos less than elements dot length. And I'm just going to put the brackets in. Now what we're saying there is while the index position, so where we're up to when we're scanning through this array, while it's less than the length. So for example, you can see here with the array elements, I've got 5 numbers in there. So our element's length will be set to 5. Whereas the index position starts the count from 0. So the first time it goes through, so the number 5 is element at element position 0, 7 is position 1, 12 is position 2, 8 is position 3, and the number 3 is position 4. So therefore we can get right through to the end of the array with this test. We know that basically while index pos is less than the element's length, we know that there's still processing to do. In other words, we haven't reached the end. So next I'm just going to put a simple output to the console, system.out.println, print line. And we'll put processing plus index pos. That's just going to tell us which index position we're currently processing. And this code, remember, the code in the brackets is executed once for each element in the array. So essentially, while this process goes through the array, this is going to be executed once per sort of iteration. So next we're going to put sum total equals sum total plus, and we're going to add, what we need to find now is the element that we're working on that's in this elements array. So we're going to type elements, and we need to use the index pos because that's our calculator. That's our sort of index position. That's the element of this elements array that we're currently processing. So I'm going to call that, I'm going to type, I should say, index pos. And I'm going to finish off that line there, and I'm going to press enter, and I'm just going to do a system.out.println. We'll put the sum total was plus sum total. So this code is only executed once this becomes false. So remember, the while condition, it has to be true. So while that is true, the code in here is going to be continually executed. So it'll execute once and then go back and start again. And it'll continually execute until that's false. Now, can you see that there's a problem at the moment with this statement or with this loop? What we haven't done is we haven't told it to increase the index position. So what's going to happen is it's going to go into here to the while, the Boolean expression in here. It's going to say, well, okay, that's true because at the moment, the first time we're running this index position is 0, and elements.length we've determined is 5. So that statement or that Boolean expression is currently true. So in other words, it will go into this code. So it'll start outputting that as you'd expect it to do. It'll print processing index position 0, and it'll add the total to 5. But what we haven't done is we haven't said to increment the index position. And if we don't add that, we're going to be stuck in a loop forever, and it's never going to get out of the loop to get to this piece of code. So what we need to do is after that, we need to type index pos. And there is a shortcut. If you want to put, the long form is typing index pos plus 1 like so, which works fine. But a shortcut to that, we can go back to here and we can put plus equals 1. So what that really means is just an abbreviation to say index pos equals index pos plus 1. Likewise, if we wanted to, we could put a minus there, and that would be index pos equals index pos take 1. And just to be clear, what we're doing is we're saying take the current value of index pos, which is currently 0, and add 1 to it. So in other words, at the end of this statement, the first time we go through, it's going to be a 1. So it's going to get to the end of the line there, and then it's going to come back up here again and reevaluate this again. So again, index pos less than elements.length, index pos will then be 1, and obviously that will still not be false, so it'll be true in other words, and it will continue processing. So let's try running this and see what happens. What we should get is we end up with the sum of these 5 numbers, which is 5 plus 7 is 12, plus 12 is 24, plus 8 is 32, plus 3 is 35. So we should have some output saying the sum total was 35. I'm going to always save resources before launching. Click OK. And we can see on the screen here we've got processing. You can see the array elements. So that's the number. That's the number of index pos. Processing 1, 2, 3, 4. And just to be clear, what we could do, we could put something here. We can put value. Okay, just make that full screen again. And we can put the elements pos, elements index pos. So what we're doing is now we're going to output the index position, but also the value, just so you can sort of see on the screen that they are different. I'll run that again. So you can see now processing 0, which of course is the first element. You can see it's the number 5. Processing 1, the value is 7, and 12, 8, and 3. So that's working nicely. But there's a few other statements. Firstly, there's a break, and there's a continue that you can use in these loops. Now let's just say, for example, we're going to add another number here. And we want to do something with our code. So if a negative number is reached, we exit out of the loop. In other words, we've decided that anytime we receive a number that is less than 0, we don't want to do any more processing, and we want to stop the processing at that point and exit. So what we can do there is we can come down here before the sum. Now this is a decision pragmatically you'd have to make. You'd have to decide, in this case with our logic, do we want to add the sum of the total first or not? In this case, because we're looking for a -1, I'm going to put the code here straight after the output to the screen. And I'm going to put the code if elements index pos less than 0 break. I'll just make a bit of space here so you can see. So what we're saying here is any time when we're iterating, or when we're going through this entire array, if we find that the value in that array for that particular position is less than 0, we want to execute, we want to stop processing altogether and move straight down to here. So you can see at the moment it's set as the 4th element. So what should happen is the first 3 elements will be processed as they normally were and added to the sum total. And then we get to the 4th one and then it should stop. So let's run that. So again, you can see what's happened. Processing of 0, 1 and 2 were as expected. So the sum total of those is 5 plus 7 is 12, plus 12 is 24. They got to the 3rd value, which was a -1. And the sum total was then 24, and at that point it exited because of this break statement. So that's the idea of a break statement, and look, that can be very useful to have that break statement in there, because there could be some sort of condition that you just sort of want to override the default. In this case, it was if the values was less than 0. Now there might be another value. Let's just say we've got another scenario here where if we get a value that is greater than 99, in other words 100 or more, we want to basically not record that total and then skip to the next process. So different to break exits, it actually exits the whole loop. Continue, we can say from this point onwards, if you hit it, just go back and continue with the next option. So what I mean by that, or the way to check this, we can put if elements index pos greater than 99, continue. So again, what we're saying there is if that happens, if we find an entry, a number that's greater than 99, we want to not execute this code. So this code down here will not be executed. Instead, it will go back up to here again and start executing again. But you can see that there's going to be an issue here if we leave this code as is, and that's that in this case where the number has been returned and is greater than 99, we haven't incremented the index position, and that means we're going to be stuck in a loop again, and it's going to be forever checking the same element position. So what we really need to do is put another copy of this in here, just to be clear that we are going to increment to the next position. So now, and just to be really clear here, let's just put the output just so we know that that code's been executed. We'll do that both for break and for continue. So I'll do the same, and I'll just change that so it says continue. Okay, so if we run this now, we shouldn't get continue to show because we haven't got a number. So you can see break was hit because we've got an entry in our array that is set to -1. Continue wasn't executed because we haven't got a value that's greater than 100. So if we then set up the value to say it's 100, so we've added another one there, save that, and then execute it. Now what's happened there is I should have put the 100 before the -1, because the -1, that exits out of the entire loop, and therefore this never gets checked. So what we really need to do, the break should be the last thing you want to do before all the other conditions are fulfilled. So in this case, what we'll need to do is put this before that. Clean it up a bit. Okay, so now we're going to be checking for the continue first, and only if that isn't the case do we then go back through and check for break. So I'll run that now. Now again, why hasn't that worked? Well, that's now because we've got these elements here in the wrong order. So we've decided, because we put the -1 before the 100, what we've done is we've prioritized that and we've sort of processed that first. So in other words, it's reached the -1 before it ever got to the 100. So if I change the order of that, and look here and put the 100 before the -1, and now if we run that again, you can see we've got both now. So we've got 0, 1, 2, and then it got to the third element, to the fourth element. It processed the first 3 okay, and it got to 100 and it said continue. So in other words, it hit this code and we didn't add anything to the sum total. Then we issued the break, and of course the break was then only calculating the sum of 24, which was 12 plus 7 plus 5. So there you go. That's a bit of an overview of the while. I hope that's given you a bit more of an understanding of how that works. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the for loop, which is another looping mechanism within Java.